Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions Daily. I brought back to the show Kian Golzari, and today's a special. We're going to do what we normally do on the podcast is our in-depth. So we take a look back over his career from the very beginning. And so welcome back to the show, Kian.
Thanks very much, Danny. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. And it's a real honor to do an episode like this. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much for setting it up.
No worries. While I'm sharing these to the groups, do you want to tell everyone what you've been up to today in the last 48 hours before we get into your history and stuff?
Sure. Yeah. The last 48 hours have been pretty similar to the last 6 weeks. just been sort of staying at home. But as we were kind of talking off air a little bit, just been trying to maintain discipline as much as possible, challenge myself to do new things, just so that I don't get too comfortable or anything like that. And what I've been challenging myself with right now is waking up at 5 a.m. every day, which is something that I've never done before. And it was really interesting because I heard on a podcast, it was Ed Milet. He was saying that, who came up with this notion of 24 hours in a day? Like, it's just 24 hours is just, it doesn't mean anything. It's like, and if you actually break your day down into 3 different times, like 6 a.m. until 12, 12 until 6, and then 6 until midnight, you ever have those days where like you get accomplished in a day what it would normally take you, you get accomplished in a few hours what would normally take you in a whole day. And that's when you break your day down into micro days. So that's why I start at 5 a.m. so I can get up at 5 so I can start work at 6. And by 12, I've already done as much as I would normally do in a full day. And then I've still got the rest of the day ahead of me, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So I've been trying to put that discipline in my mind, and it's just been phenomenal how much I've been able to get done every day during quarantine.
So you break them down into sprints, if you like. So your day is in different sections. Cool. I'm just going to say a few hellos. So welcome back, Daniel, Selva, Andrew's back here. Michael says good morning, Danny, Kian, and everyone. Patricia is here. Sharon as well. Who else have we got coming into Robert, Connor, Tiffany is back again. Hey Tiff, hope you are well. Right, so let's get into it. Let's take it way back. Talk to me about what your parents instilled in you as a kid.
Well, it's really interesting. So my parents are both from Iran, and I was born in Scotland, and my parents came from Iran to Scotland for university. And it was actually, they were studying in Scotland at the time of the Iranian Revolution. If anyone's seen that film Argo, it's when the sort of Iranian embassy was overthrown, and then they sort of got a new king into power. So they couldn't go back to Iran after their education. So they decided to settle in Scotland. And my dad's passion was like camping and outdoor. So he started off in like the market stalls where like he was selling camping and outdoor gear and army surplus gear in the markets. And then eventually they got enough money to build their own shop. They got their own shop and they started selling other brands. And then literally about 30 years ago, my dad was like, I want to make my own stuff. And he went to China for the first time 30 years ago. And that was at a time when China was coming out of like a communist rule. And, the factories like privatized were allowed to build for themselves for the first time. So he was sort of going over to China, teaching them, look, this is how we make goods in the Western world. And they were sort of learning off each other, and they really built up their businesses together. So I was super fortunate and super lucky in that when I was like 5 years old, I just saw my dad going to China all the time. I was so curious. I was like, what goes on in China? And then that just from a young age, it really sparked my imagination. And our Chinese suppliers used to come over to Scotland to visit us, and they would bring their kids. So me and these Chinese kids, like 5-10 years old, we used to hang out, and now they're running their dad's factory and I'm basically running my own business, and they've gone on to do huge things. And I've just been very fortunate to be in that environment from such a young age. But I've definitely been mentored by my dad from a young age as well, because like, I think, anyone who's a parent, right, you may not necessarily know the impact you're making on your kids at such a young age, but I just saw my dad working so hard from when I was like 5 years old to like 15 years old or whatever. And even though you don't understand it like as a kid, but you see it. And when you're older, you start to realize, that this is why, dad was working late, and, this is why he went to China. And that sort of hard work just then gets ingrained in you as a person. So for me growing up, like hard work was normal. So now I'm like 32 years old. I don't mind working until like midnight because that's all I've seen all my life, if you know what I mean. So it's very interesting to see like the values that you instill in your kids. You don't know what effect you're having on them. So just make sure you're influencing them in the right way, even when they're not watching.
Yeah. So where did you get a taste for it yourself? Obviously you were inspired by your dad and your family. I take it, have you always worked in the family business and not anywhere else? And this is all you've done, or?
No. So basically, like it was interesting because I feel like I'm very lucky because I've been almost like perfectly parented in that, like as a young kid, my parents made me get a job. Like so, when I was 12 years old, I was delivering like newspapers in the snow, like before school, like waking up really early. And they could have just given me pocket money, but they were like, no, you need to go work for your money. And like I never wasted money from a young age because I know how hard I had to work like to get it. And then from there, like every summer, I'd always just work in the company, and I'd work one summer in like the sales department, in the marketing department, in the finance department. And then when it came my time to graduate from university, I really loved the buying side of it. And I've got one older brother, his name's Ram, and he's awesome as well. And he works in the family business, and he took charge of like the sales side because he's very much of an extrovert, outgoing. He can sell you anything, like that's his nature. And I'm very much of an introvert, just keep myself to myself, head down, and just crack on. So that's why I was more involved in purchasing and planning and buying and things like that. And he was involved in the sales, but we work very, very closely together because he's just a year and a half older than me. And I think that's been a big key to success as well, because we're so close. We're like best friends in that when we're running a company of like 30, 40, 50 employees, I see in other businesses, whenever something goes wrong, there's such a blame culture. Like, oh, the sales didn't happen because the marketing department didn't do it right, or the buying department delivered it too late. Whereas with me and my brother, we're like, all right, we've got a problem. How do we fix it? And everything was just positive, like going forward. And he was very, very good in the sales aspect of things. So he would always have meetings with the retailers, and I would just always go to the stores and visit. So when we had meetings with Tesco, Argos, Sainsbury's, distributors in the Middle East or in Germany, I would go to all those meetings to see what the customers wanted. And then whenever I go to China, he would often come as well and see, right, this is how we make stuff. So there was full like vertical integration. I was spending time with the manufacturers. I was developing the brand. I was spending time with the buyers and the retailers, and then also just onto the independent stores as well, and doing observations of who's going into the stores and who's buying what. So I had a touch point at every different sector in the market, and I feel, and from such a young age as well. So I've always had that understanding of what different businesses needed. So I think that's been like critical as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because the dynamics between you and your brother, like there didn't sound like there was any competition. You complemented each other. He's like he's yin to his yang, etc. And would you say you're the details person? So he was good.
Absolutely.
He had the patter. He could go out and work the room, and you took care of the details in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think us getting along very well. And I don't know if it just happened like that naturally, or if my dad like groomed us into those sort of roles. Like I'll never know. But we both love what we do. And we worked together at Highlanders, the name of the family business, camping and outdoor, 8 years for me. And it just got to a stage where a couple of years ago I left that role, but I only left it because I felt like I'd done everything I could possibly do. Because I always go by like a principle of like learn or leave. If I'm not growing every single year, and the business was growing every single year, more employees, more turnovers, more customers, more markets, more channels, everything was growing, and it's growing very like steadily as well. We got 80,000 square foot warehouse, never borrowed anything from the bank. Like everything is like very, very sound in our business, and we already sort of supplied the Olympics, United Nations, a lot of retailers. I'd met all the buyers. We developed products within the outdoor category, which won a lot of awards. And I was like, I feel like I've hit the ceiling now. Like I need a new challenge, and I need to see what I'm capable of now as well, like for myself. And that's when I decided to make the step out. And I've got a massive passion for the NBA, so I was like, I want to make it a goal of mine to now supply the NBA.
We'll get there. Let me tickle that one in a bit later. Let's slow down the pace because there's a load of stuff I want to cover with you. So if we go back just a little bit, and then I'm going to get into name my MBA and everything, because that's going to be the some of the key parts of your career, right? What was important, in terms of like school? What you mentioned earlier on is like you got to grow, right? Do you think macro? We're talking now. Do you think school was an absolute waste of time, or was it important?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, high school, I was a straight A student, and but I was never an academic, and I only became a straight A student because I wanted to, if you know what I mean. Because I never got good grades in school ever. But in your life, there are very few moments where something clicks and something snaps. For me, it happened when I was like 4 years before graduating high school. I was sitting next to my best friend in class, and we were getting all our grades from all our different subjects. And he got a better score than me in every single subject that we were doing. And we were looking at our scores, and he was like, "Oh, I beat you in every single class." and it just sparked a fuse under me. And then from then on, I got straight A's, and I've never looked back. And it's like, so that was just basically in terms of like high school academia. But in terms of university, I went to university and I studied business, and I actually wrote my dissertation, my thesis, on the value of entrepreneurship education is worthless if you want to become an entrepreneur. Because I had built 2 businesses whilst I was in university. I'd even had a business once when I was in high school, and I learned everything from that and from my own experiences in working in the family business. And what I learned in the textbook, zero of it I could apply to real business, because they don't teach you how to hire people, they don't teach you how to fire people, they don't teach you how to set up in a tax efficient manner, they don't teach you how to build a corporate culture, anything, the important stuff they don't teach you. So but that's not to say university isn't important. You just have to realize where you are at your moment in life, because I knew that going into university that I was always going to have my own business, but I knew that I wanted 4 years of having fun before I entered that world. So I kind of used university as a way of, let me just, join as many clubs as possible, meet as many people as possible, just live life without any responsibility and complete freedom before I enter that world. And I think having that mindset was key, because that's where I met a lot of my business partners that I work with now. And that was also one of my inroads into the MBA. But I'm not saying that like university is a waste of time, because I think if you want to be a doctor, you absolutely have to study medicine.
Yeah, medicine, you've got the discipline and stuff. But I'm just talking about what, my argument, and I have this with my wife about my daughter, because I say to my daughter, do what the fuck you want. As long as you get maths, English, and you hustle, it's job done. All the rest is just bullshit to me. My wife hates that, because I think that schools teach you to go and get a good job. They don't teach you to go and work for yourself and provide job for others. And that's what annoys me. But anyway, I'm going off. This is about you, not me. So going back to, you mentioned 2 businesses you built, right? Was that independent of the family?
Yeah, that was independent. Yeah, they were both in university.
Cool. Let's unpack those. Business number 1. What was it?
Yeah. So in my 3rd year of university, I studied abroad at University of Miami, and it was just sort of like a classic entrepreneur. You find a problem and you create an opportunity. So like our university campus was like a $50 taxi ride from South Beach. So $50 there, $50 back, plus all the money to get into clubs. It was just $150 to go on a night out, which was too expensive for a lot of students. So what I did was I contacted a lot of nightclubs and I said, hey, what time do you get busy? All right, 11:30. Okay, what if I bring you 100 students into the club who are going to be well dressed? And what if I bring them in at 10:30, an hour before you get busy? So they'll all be at the bar buying drinks when you're not busy. They're like, all right, cool. But I was like, for that, I need everyone to get in free. They're like, okay, cool. And then I was like, right, how do we get to the club? So I hired one of those big yellow school buses.
Yeah.
So I managed to get that on the cheap. And then like, obviously we parked the school bus like round the corner from the club, not like outside it. And then I used to sell wristbands for $11 each. And so for $11, that would get you a ride into South Beach, a ride back, free entry into the club, and also negotiate them a free drink when they get in as well, because obviously they're going to spend the rest of the night. So they're like, wow, something that normally would cost me $150, I'm getting for $11. It's a no-brainer. I used to sell like 100 tickets on Friday and 100 tickets on Saturday. And I used to rotate the nightclubs every single weekend.
So give me some examples. What year was this and what clubs? I mean, were you on Ocean and Washington?
Ocean Drive. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was South Beach and downtown. And this is when I was 21 years old. So I was legal in America because the drinking age there is 21. So I was making over $1,000 a week just running a nightclub business, which was crazy because, my parents were like, oh, you're in university. Let me send you some money. I was like, no, it's cool. I'm working. They're like, how are you working? Like, you're at school. I was like, well, it was easy.
See what happened? You nearly run ahead. And if I didn't say, let's go and unpack that, no one would have known that you were earning $1,000 a week at 21 in Miami. I mean, where did it all go wrong?
So it didn't go wrong. I just finished.
I was joking. Yeah. Perfect life. Miami Beach. You're earning $1,000 a week. You're doing parties and everything. And that was just a little side hustle. So that was business number 1. Why did you shut that down and move on? Just got bored.
Well, I was only in Miami for 1 year for my 3rd year, so I had to come back to Glasgow. I studied at Glasgow University in Scotland, and then so I had to come back for my 4th year. So when I came back, I just shut it down, and people who stayed on at the university just continued on the business. But it's interesting you say, like, where did it all go wrong? Because actually, when I came back to Scotland, I had what I would call like a reverse culture shock, and I got so used to the quality of life in Miami in terms of sunny every day, palm trees, beaches, amazing parties, making good money, and then like I love American sports, NBA games on the regular, like frat parties, all that stuff. I was like, it was like the dream. And then I came back to Glasgow. It was raining every day. There was no like sort of live sports. There was no like, that level of nightclubs and all that sort of stuff. And then like a life that you're so used to is now like almost not depressing, but it just makes you sad. It's not that high quality of life that you used to have. And I had a real time struggling to cope with that. So I hired a life coach. Someone recommended me get in touch with this life coach, and she taught me about meditation. And I learned all about meditation, visualization, and like knowing where you are right now, knowing what your goals are for the next 5 to 10 years, visualizing that, making that happen. And then I became absolutely like the happiest I've ever been, because it's like, yeah, you aren't where you want to be, but you're on the path to get there, and you know what you do need to get there. And as long as you're working towards that every day, you're on the right journey.
So are you like me? When you want to do something, whether it's a business project, whatever, you sit, like people, there's two things, right? You can dream about, when I grow up and dream, I want to do that. Or you can crystallize it in your mind. Everything I do through visualization. Do you see the end line, and then you unpack the story going backwards and put it all together?
Absolutely. And just to give something like actionable, like what she would tell me is that imagine you're watching yourself on TV, and what you're watching is you living your dream life. So let's say your dream life is living in this really nice condo in Miami. She was like, all right, now visualize yourself driving into your apartment. What car are you driving in? Exactly. What's the interior of the car smell like? What did the valet who greets you at the door, what do they look like? What do you call them? Like, what's their name? Like, you see yourself going up the elevator, and you just dream it, you visualize it, and then you're literally like living in that moment. And then you start to see different things that you never saw before. And now like what you have to do to get there. And you almost like piece it back to where you are today. And then basically when you wake up or get out of that visualization, you know exactly what you need to do, and you're so motivated to get there.
And when it happens, how fucking surreal is it? When what you've been visualizing it, and it unfolds, and you see it, and it drops on the penny, exactly, you execute. It's an incredible feeling, isn't it?
So I'm not joking. I used to get like an A3 piece of paper, and I used to map it out. So I would say like, here's where I am right now. And in the top corner would be like where I want it to be. And then all the things that I wrote that I said would need to happen happened. And I actually like printed them out, and I stuck them on the piece of paper, and I had that next to my bed, and I looked at it every day. And it was things like, I want to move to China. I want to learn Mandarin. I need to read these books. I want to graduate from university with a first-class degree. I want to get the top mark in my year. Everything happened. Everything. And even down to like health and nutrition and getting a six-pack and all that sort of stuff. Everything happened. And it's just like, it's so easy for people to say, oh, nice one. Yeah, meditation, all this, like, what I mean? Some people just don't get on board with it, but it works. It really works.
Yeah, I agree. We've got, hey guys, hope you're fine. Then we've got, yes, meditation calms the mind. Visualize and then actualize, very powerful technique. Love meditation, good. Meditation could be life-changing. So I just like to go through everyone. Kata, being cheeky here, talking about you and your brother. They do complete because he thinks he's better looking than you. Matt says, easy guys. And then Tiff says, yeah, he's going so fast, slow. So that's just me where we're unpacking the story. Or we wouldn't have got this bit. And then Jason said, morning guys, looking forward to this call. And Cybe's back again, another lockdown at 4 p.m, keeping us well disciplined, Danny. Sharon's here as well, saying hi as well. Sharon, you've done an introduction, and Marcin is here as well. So what I want to be able to do now is, we've covered business number one. We've covered some visualization. Let's talk about business number two in and around that time.
Sure, yeah. So business number two came when I went back to Glasgow University for my final year. And I was just driving down the street one day, and I had this idea. I watched an episode of like MTV Cribs, and there was a rapper like Ja Rule, and he had his name embroidered in his headrest. And I was like, oh, wouldn't that be really cool if you could like just have your name on your headrest? So I was like, how do we do that? All right, let's make a headdress cover. So I was like, right, how do I make a headdress cover? And by this time, like, I'd never been to China. I didn't have any buying experience or anything like that. So at that time, I went on Alibaba, when Alibaba was actually connecting you with manufacturers. And I basically just typed in headdress cover, talked to a supplier, and as soon as I sent an email, I got a phone call right away, and it was a Chinese number, and it's like, all right, how can we help? Let's do this. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. So when I was in university, that was my first sort of interaction with a supplier in China. It wasn't through my family business, just through an interaction I made. And I was like, okay, cool. Having your name on your headdress cover is nice, but it's not necessarily scalable. I was like, what is scalable? I was like, well, the football clubs are. So I thought, okay, Manchester United, Arsenal, Celtic, Rangers, all these clubs, Real Madrid, Barcelona. Let me put the club's logo on the front of the headdress cover and the best player's name and number on the back of the headdress cover, like a football shirt, but on headdress cover. Yeah. And then essentially I just got the logos off the internet, sent it to the supplier, made some samples, and then I just started writing to these football clubs. And I was like, I've got this idea for a product. Can I acquire your license to make it? 9 out of 10 of them told me to get lost, but I got to speak to Manchester City, Arsenal, and Celtic, and I got meetings with all of them. And then they were like, yeah, okay, go ahead and make a sample. And I did. And then at the time, I entered my university's business plan competition, and I just wrote about this, and I ended up winning my Glasgow University business plan competition. And then they put me forward to like the national business plan competition, and I won the Scottish business plan competition. And then they gave me funding to start the idea. And then I was like, shit, I've got real business here. I've got like, Celtic had written up all the lawyer contracts. I had several meetings with them. I delivered samples to them. I got my prices. I knew like the retailers I was going to get into, and I was writing I stopped going to class. And my mum phoned me one day, and she was like, "Why are you not in class?" I was like, "Oh, I'm running this business. I'm doing like products for football clubs." She's like, "What on earth are you doing? Get back in class, finish and graduate. You're just like 3 months away from graduating." So I was like, "Okay, cool." So I put that on hold, graduated, did that. And then I was left with a decision. I was like, do I want to join the family business, or do I want to continue down my own path and start supplying my products into football clubs and things like that? And at that time, my brother is 2 years older than me, so he was already working 2 years in the family business, and he was going through the tender process to supply the London 2012 Olympics, because this was.
Do you want to explain to people outside the UK what a tender is?
Oh yeah, cool.
I know what it is. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so basically, a tender is like when you apply to basically supply, like a contract. Before the government gives a contract, they'll give it to tender. So like they'll maybe select 200 companies, and they go through a tendering process where you stipulate, what you're good at, your strengths, your weaknesses, your cash flow, all this sort of stuff, your organization, and then they narrow it down to from 200 companies to 100 to 50 to 20 to 10 to 5 to 2 to 1, and then
to backenders as well. If you in some industries, backenders,
exactly, and then basically we were going through that tender process to supply the London 2012 Olympics, and this was in 2010, and we were starting to go down. We never even thought we would get that, and my brother applied for it. He was going to London for meetings, and then eventually we were down to like 20 companies, into 10, into 5, and then we're like, yo, I think we're going to supply the Olympics. And my dad and my brother sat me down, and they were like, so either you can join the family business and you can head up the team that does all the products that supply the Olympics, or you can go down your own route. And I was like, well, the Olympics is too big of a deal to turn down. So I said to the football clubs that they wrote up contracts, I was like, sorry, I'm not continuing this venture anymore. And they got really pissed off with me, because they'd obviously gone through all the work and paid all their lawyers and wrote up the contracts. And then I turned it down at the last minute. And I was still in university, and it was funny. I got some harsh emails from some of the football clubs, and they were like, "You will never work in this industry again."
Really?
Yeah,
obviously, you don't have to name names or anything, but do you feel like do you go off your gut?
Absolutely.
That like that's the right thing to do, and regardless of the fire coming back at you?
Yeah, and it's funny how things work out, because it didn't really bother me at all. And then, fast forward 10 years, I'm working with one of the biggest players in the world. But so at that point, I decided, right, join family business, and let's supply the Olympics. And that was a great opportunity as well, because like my brother and my dad put an enormous amount of faith in me, never been to China before, to go ahead and head up the team to basically manufacture what was our biggest contract in our company's history at the time. Yeah. So I had to learn on the fly, and I basically, as soon as I graduated from university, I started work like the next week, and then started basically putting a team together, selecting the products, and then going to China. And I was supposed to just go to China on a 3-week trip with my dad. We went for 3 weeks. He came back after the 3, and then I ended up staying for another 3 months. And I loved it, and I was just obsessed. Like, all right, this is how we make stuff. Meeting suppliers for the first time, going to their factories. My mind was just blown in terms of how products were made, and I basically ended up living in a hotel in a village town. for 3 months. And it was funny, man. There was no like even like there was no English channels on TV. There was no like Western food. It's not like when you go to China today, there's like 5-star hotels everywhere. It was like living in like proper Chinese hotels where there was no foreigners, no one speaks English.
Fuck that. And I couldn't do that again. I'm not going back to China. If I'd had to survive that, our last visit, I don't know how you do it. Yeah. So you done 3 months in?
Yeah, and I was 22 years old, and I set up an office there, hired 2 Chinese staff, and I was just going to loads of different factories. And like the nearest major city to me was a city called like Ningbo, and I remember I used to like get the train to Ningbo on the weekends just so I could watch like Premier League football. And then go for a beer, and then basically come back to the town that I was in. The town I was in, it's called Beilun.
Did you enjoy that? Was it because you're super disciplined, or did you actually enjoy that way of life?
I loved it just because I feel that like if I'm not learning, I'm suffering. And because I was in an environment where I was constantly growing, every day I was learning something new. I had to interact with different cultures. I had to try new food. I had to develop new products. I was in my perfect environment. And I feel that like you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And as soon as you're in an environment where you're too comfortable, you have to get out. And so for me, that was perfect. I ended up staying in China for a few months, came back, and then a year later ended up moving there to live there. And I moved to that city, Ningbo. I stayed there for a month, and then I moved to Shanghai. And I lived in Shanghai for 2.5 years. And that's really where I became the person that I am today, because in that sort of 2.5 year period, I was visiting factories like every single day, like over 500 factories over the course of that time. And it was like with every different factory, I was learning a new lesson. I was building a new relationship. I was developing new products, and I was really just opening my mind in terms of what's possible. And this was China in like 2012, where like it still wasn't, it was like a growing superpower. You could tell, right, this country is going to be huge, but it was still in that transition process. And living in that environment in a city where it's constantly growing, people are constantly on the move. There's always a new 5-star hotel that wasn't there before. There's a new bridge, there's a new highway, there's a new airport. There's all these foreigners coming into town. Like it was just such a fast moving environment. And then you come home, you come back to Edinburgh to see your family and stuff like that, and everything's the same. People are working the same jobs, everyone's going to the same restaurants, nothing's changed. And then you go back to that environment and you're just thrown into the deep end again. You just have to go as fast as you can. And that was a huge growing point in terms of my experience and the skills that I learned, but also in terms of like your mental toughness as well, and living in a country which is so alien to what you were used to growing up, and just being able to create a life for yourself was amazing. It was one of the best experiences of my life.
So what year was this? Because obviously you'd done the 2012 Olympics, right? Is that right? Yeah. So what year was this? Because that was leading into it or past that date?
Yeah, so after the Olympics, it was like 2013. That's when I moved to China, and I was kind of there like, and so we got to fully enjoy the Olympics experience. My brother was a torch bearer, so he actually ran with the Olympic torch when it came through Scotland, and we actually got to keep the torch. I've actually got it in my apartment right now, and that was a really amazing experience as well. And then we got to go to all the games. So I went to opening ceremony, closing ceremony, Team USA basketball, all the events that we wanted, which was an amazing experience, and to do that as a family. Was such a nice experience as well. And then from there, I was like, right, I have to go to China. And I tell you, one of the best feelings I had during that games was all the products that we developed for the games. I saw a lot of people wearing them in the Olympic Park every day. Like we were doing.
Can you give examples? Or are they under NDA, the products you developed from?
No, it's fine. So we had 9 different categories of product. So we had, we were doing backpacks, we were doing outdoor chairs, we were doing blankets, we were doing like a lot of accessories, and we were doing like a lot of products for a lot of the promotional partners. So, you have the official partners, which is like your Coca-Cola, Panasonic, EDF Energy, those sort of guys, like BP, BMW. So all those official partners of the Olympics had to buy through the licensees if they wanted the product. So all of a sudden now I was working with all these different big brands, and I was having meetings with like Panasonic in Shanghai, and we were having meetings with Coca-Cola, all these big companies, and they're like, all right. And it's interesting when you deal with these big companies, like they aren't as switched on as you think. You're dealing with someone in a marketing department with a budget, and they're like, all right, this is our budget. What can you give us? And it's like, when on earth does a customer say to you, all right, here's 6 figures. What can you give us for that money? And then you can name your price. It was crazy. It was such a surreal environment. But to be able to make products for all those different companies was a phenomenal experience. And then then we're also making it for all the retailers as well, and also like in the park, like all the official Olympic stores, we're selling our products. So just like walking around the games and seeing people going into a store and picking something up, buying it, and then wearing it, which I had made like a year prior to that, and I was in all those factories at 1 o'clock in the morning, like finishing it up, and now seeing them sold on like one of the world's biggest stages, like at such a young age, that really shaped my mind into, okay, anything is possible. Anything is possible. And,
so were you looking at the habits of how people were using them as well? Because obviously you've developed them and now you're seeing them in use. Did you, as a perfectionist, I imagine, were you picking apart certain things, how they were using it and trying to understand?
Yeah, absolutely. And in that time before the games as well, that's when I learned everything about, quality control and inspections. And, luckily everything went so smooth during that process. But after that, when we started to do a lot more products, that's when we saw like, some problems start to occur in different categories. And, like you learn your lessons through failures. And there were a lot of failures to get to where we are today as well. But as long as you can fail once, fail fast, and fail forward, as I like to say, then you'll be fine. You never make those mistakes again.
Yeah, we'll get to failures in a little while. You know that. Next step. So Olympics 2013, you've bypassed Olympics. You've gone back there. I'm imagining, like you said, let me just throw something to you. You said that you made that decision to leave the football world, the stuff you're doing, to take on the Olympic stuff. I think your family see what you've done on your own, and it was a benefit that you came back on board as a family member to take on the Olympic stuff because you've earned your stripes outside of the family. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because like at the time when I wasn't in the family business, we still had like a sales team. We had sales agents on the road and all that sort of stuff. And we had never got any product into any sort of sport licenses or football clubs or anything like that. And my dad was saying to me, it was like, how is it that a kid in university studying in his final year can get a product into retailers in the UK, and we've got a full sales staff which have had sales experience for 20 years and they can't do that? So I think it was like an eye-opening experience for him to be like, all right, let's
Is
get him
this
in
your
the company.
father?
Yeah.
But there's levels to this. I call them rainmakers. You're not going to get them in every business. The people that drive them, the ones who sprinkle the fairy dust, the ones that make it happen. That's what sets the 1%, 2%, 3% apart from the rest, I'm afraid. And I mean that in a nice way.
Yeah, and also like I'm going into this business knowing that I've got something to prove, because I'm going into a business with maybe 30 employees and I'm like coming in as the boss's son. And I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, he's here because his dad's the boss. Like I'm here because I belong. I'm here because I deserve to be here. I'm here because I'm the best at what I do. So I'm going in with that attitude, if you know what I mean. So I have to prove my worth, and it just made me work even harder.
Yeah, that makes sense. So 2013, 14, where do we know? We've done Shanghai. Fuck there, you lived in China for so long and ate all the local food and it didn't drive you mad. So I know you decide to live uncomfortable, but that would be way too uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like last year, in China, I was on the flight nearly 3 times. I had to be stopped from flying home early because I was getting pissed off about not having a mobile phone connection. So I admire you for that. 2014, what we're doing there. So post-Olympics.
Yeah, so I was in China like full time for like 2.5 years after the Olympics. So I was kind of in China like 2013 to 2015.
Yeah.
And then it was only after living there for 2.5 years I decided to come back to Scotland because I love China, and I still go back like every 3 months. This is actually the longest period of my life. I've never been in China because of the coronavirus. But I decided I wanted to come back home because the pollution was so bad. That was the main reason. Because like you heard the stories about the smog in China, and like the pollution would always measure like over the index, like over what was the highest calculated amount. It was beyond that. So I was like, this is very unhealthy. And pollution is measured by the thickness of the particles in the air, and China gets their energy from coal production. So there's literally particles of coal flying in the air that you're breathing into your lungs and your mouth and your nose. So I was like, right, this is too dodgy. I need to go home. And I was also at a stage in my life where I was now 25, 26 years old. And I was like, I don't have my own apartment. I don't have my own car. Like I was renting there and I was taking taxis everywhere. So I was like, I just want a bit of stability now where I can have my own place. I can call it home. I can buy my own car and things like that. So, and then come spend time with my family again. So that was my main motivation. I came home 26 years old, bought my own apartment, got a car, and then I thought I would settle down here. And then I just sort of continued to work in the family business in Edinburgh. And we kept growing it every single year, and we started to get distribution in Germany. We got into a lot of the retailers like your Tesco's, your Argos's. We developed products for a lot of these retailers as well, and we manufactured for them under license. We filled 19 pages of the Argos catalog was made by us, and those were huge growing experiences as well. And did that for another 3 or 4 years, and then that's when I decided to finish up and start my own venture, because I felt like I had achieved everything that I could achieve.
Cool. So I think we've warmed up well and truly now. I know the audience is waiting for the next drop. Who come first, the NBA or Neymar?
NBA came first.
Let's talk about the NBA. Let's unpack that.
So it was interesting, right? In 2008, 2009, I studied University of Miami, my third year abroad, got a passion for basketball. So I joined the practice squad. Obviously, it wasn't good enough to play for the team because they're all 6'6" and a lot more athletic than I am. And then they went on to play in the NBA. But I sort of met a few of the players, had a good relationship with them, saw them every day. We practiced and all that sort of stuff, became friends on Facebook, Instagram, all that sort of stuff when Instagram came later on. And one of the players, his name's Jack, he went to play in the NBA. He got drafted by the San Antonio Spurs, played in the NBA for a while, played in Europe, got injured, came back, got injured again. And then he just sort of had bad luck with injuries, and he came out of the NBA. And then I saw that because he was friends, he knows the league and he's friends with the players. I saw that he was approaching to get the NBA license. And I only saw this because he was posting on like his Instagram stories. And I'd spent all this time in China manufacturing licenses, and he knows the league. So I just sent him a DM on Instagram, direct message. And I said, hey man, we went to university 8 years ago. I've been doing all this stuff in China. This is who I work with. These are all the products that I do. Can you get the NBA license, and can you get some players on board, and let's put these two worlds together? Because like I didn't know anyone in the NBA. I didn't have access to that world. He didn't have access to the manufacturing world. I was like, let's put these two together. So I basically got some of his samples, what he was working on. He was manufacturing in downtown LA, but you can imagine with the factories that I work with compared to what is capable in downtown LA, like the world of a difference. So he was so surprised that I was able to make it a lot better than what he was doing, and also like at a third of the price. Yeah. And I also had all the relationships with retailers, and I knew how to get products in there. And then I just went out to LA, went for a meeting, gave him the samples, prices were great. And he was like, right, I want you to come in and be a partner in this company. And then when I saw who else were partners in the company, which are some of the best players in the world, like Steph, I don't know if you know the NBA players, but like Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
So he was a partner in the company, and he's also he was a roommate of my business partner, Jack, because we both got drafted in the NBA in 2009, and he's friends with all these other guys. So I was like, this is a dream. Like I've got a direct relationship with all these players now, and I'm making products under license for them, for the league, for the teams, and also for the players directly. And it was at that time where I decided, right, I need to move to LA, because I was constantly traveling like every single month. And this is at the time where I started to get heavily involved in the Amazon and e-commerce community as well, and start speaking at events. A lot of the events were in America. NBA business was there. So I was like, right, let's just make the move. So again, similar. I feel like every sort of 3 or 4 years I move to a different country, whether it be like going to the States for university, going to live in China, now going to live in LA. Like I just can't stay in one place for that long a period of time. And then we just really helped. We just built the business up, and then we got a lot more players involved. And then we started working with NFL athletes. A lot of other players started reaching out, and then Neymar caught wind of the product, because I don't know if you've seen the product, but it's basically we were doing blankets, and the player's body is on the blanket and their face is on the pillow. So a child like goes to sleep like dreaming that they are their favorite player. And the slogan of the company is "Dream Bigger." The company's called Active Dreamers, and we basically Neymar's got like a 4-year-old son. So one of his team members in Brazil reached out and were like, oh, Neymar might be interested in this product. So we sent him some images, sent some details, sent some information. And then they got on board, and then we did a contract together. And it was an amazing contract, because they were going to give us 12 social media posts, 2 on Instagram, 10 on Facebook. And on Instagram, he's got 140 million followers. And I was like, wow, like his audience are going to see like all the products that we've been developing. But something like that I learned is that in life and in business, like every single time you go up a level, you just get smacked in the mouth, and it's like you get hit so hard, and it's almost like that's your test to see if you belong on that level, and if you can get up and if you can keep going. then you're fine and you keep going. And then basically when you hit that next level, you get hit in the mouth again. And it's like, it all sounds so easy. Oh, like I went to China, I got the product, I met this player and we posted it and we made all this money. Like there were so many challenges in the way
Well,
as
let's
well.
talk about some of that's the thing. And I always say to people, you know, there's a thing in boxing. I think you like boxing as well. There's levels. There is levels, you know, and you find your level. Some will go to European, some will go to world level. But there is a level and you find your space. And like you said, you break through or you don't. And there's no shame in giving everything you've got and then reaching your level. It's always nice to know how far you can stretch yourself. So you talk about being smacked in the mouth. Let's break that down.
So it happened.
Give me some details.
It happened at every stage. So like, you know, even when I started working with the Olympics, one of the retailers that we got into took a really large volume of products. Now remember, like these retailers don't have like a sales history to go off. Like when they're ordering for the Olympics is a 2-week window in the summer, and they haven't had that last year. And the last Olympics was in Beijing. They don't have the sales history. They don't have the same market. So they're like, okay, yeah, we'll take 50,000 of this. And we're like, are you sure you can sell 50,000? And they're like, yeah, we got all these stores. And so basically what happened was we delivered them what they wanted, but with all these retailers, they purchase on credit. So essentially you have to finance the order, you have to ship the goods, and then you only really get paid after they sell the products in their store. So it's quite a big financial risk as well that you're taking on, but it's even more of a risk because it's in Olympic branding, and after the Olympic Games, any Olympic product is dead. Like no one wants it. So you're taking a massive risk. And then we had access to their EDI. We could see their sales orders like during the games when they got the stock delivered, and they weren't selling anywhere near the amount of goods that they had ordered. So I was like, okay, we've got something coming here. They're definitely going to be in touch. And then right enough, the next day they were in touch and they were like, hey, your products haven't met our quality standards. We're getting a lot of returns. This was like an outdoor blanket. They're like, when it rains on the blanket, there's the color fades and we're returning all of them. I was like, well, that's interesting, because when I was in China, I actually got the goods tested because I'd learned good fundamentals of sourcing properly, and I got them tested by Intertek, and Intertek had said that it had passed specifically for color fastness as well, and it had passed like above industry standards. So when they said they were turning it for this, and I just sent back their certificate, I was like, well, this is a certificate by a third party saying that they're absolutely fit for purpose. And then they had to take the stock, and then they had to pay some money. So it's things like this that, like, I've heard a lot of stories of like retailers basically bankrupting businesses because the buyers are judged on their margin, and if they over order and they bring a loss to their category, then they're not necessarily going to get their promotion or whatever. So they basically put as much burden back onto their supplier as possible. And that's what they tried to do with us. And even with Neymar as well, like, you know, he was supposed to post our products in the Russia World Cup 2018. And I was in Brazil and I met with his whole team during the World Cup while we were supposed to do that. And he actually posted about 2 months ago or 6 weeks ago. Yeah. So in 2020, he posted, but we were ready 2018. So for a year and a half, we've been paying storage on a lot of goods. And it's like, well, you don't like it? Well, you have to call someone in Brazil. This guy doesn't answer, you know, and it's like, there were so many challenges that we got set as a business, but we just had to keep pivoting. We found different ways. Like, we reached out to our different networks within the NBA, and then we started making Neymar product for the NBA players and sending it to their house. They started posting it. We created a buzz about it, so we were able to start selling it and offset some cash flow before Neymar actually posted, and things like this. But any one of these situations could have bankrupted. Like, you know, imagine an Olympic order saying like, no, you're not getting that, you're not getting paid for that, or like Neymar saying, or no, well, paying for his goods like 2 years before you actually are able to sell it. So there was a lot of different situations where we had to pivot as well. And even I've supplied some products to like the military contracts and things like that, where suppliers forget to add like a waterproof coating on the bags, whereas it was previously stipulated, and things like that. And that's a good reason why it's like important to work with honorable suppliers, is that they take responsibility for stuff like that. And we actually had our supplier remake an order of 20,000 bags at their own cost and ship it out to us. Wow. Because they said, okay, we're going to take a massive loss on this order, but this is a customer that we're going to work with for the long term, for the next 10, 20, 30 years or whatever. So if we can just take a loss on this one, we're going to work together for a long time. And 10 years later, we'll still working together. And we still talk about that time. That was like a make or break decision for him. He was like, I could completely screw over my customer and save a bit of money here, or I can just take the hit and I'm going to get a lot of orders for the long term. And that's what happened. So, and that's also as a result of building the relationships that we've talked about on previous podcasts as well. It can't go, underestimated. So, and then also like with my travel brand, Veltra, which we've not really talked about, I was supposed to launch that this month, but Corona happened. Previous to that, Trump put the tariffs on bags 44%. He put it up from 17, an additional 25%. So in business, you keep getting smacked in the mouth, but you have to keep showing that you're worthy of those tests, and that you're able to pivot and you're able to get around it. So, and it's fun, man. Like if you don't love this process and you're in the wrong game, like every day. And here's the thing, like, everyone talks about like the work-life balance. I think that's bullshit, because like my life is my work. I love what I do. I would do this if I wasn't getting paid for it. If it was absolutely free. Yeah. I would still do everything that I'm doing today. And that's why I think there's a little bit of a problem in our sort of e-commerce industry, where people get that shiny object syndrome. They jump into it to get rich, but it's not like that. You have to love it. And that's when the true success comes.
It comes down to meaning and purpose. Like, I can't get up in the morning if I can't get behind a project unless it meets 3 criterias. And if that meet that, then there's no chance, because I can't get motivated. I suppose you're the same. And when you get smacked in the mouth, like you said, if you love what you do, you can take the hit, can't you? You can come again. But if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, there's absolutely no chance you stay in the course.
Exactly.
So, another smack in the mouth. Tell me another one.
Well, I mean, that was kind of it. It happened with military contracts, it happened with the Olympics, it happened with Neymar, it happened with Ultra. And it's just like, it's going to keep on happening. Like, every time you go up a level, it's going to keep happening. So I think the key is having self-awareness, because I see that, like, I study like a lot of people that I aspire to be like, or anyone who's doing really well in business. I really look at them in depth, and I speak to them, and I figure out like what are their habits, what are their rituals. And it's interesting that all the winners that I see invest in themselves. Invest in their knowledge, invest in their skills. And it's like, if you dissect it, what I've been doing, like for the past 10 years, I've been obsessed with developing products and living in China and providing the absolute best solutions to the brands that I want to work with. So that's my skill and that's my knowledge. And I've been very patient with it. I've been going at it for 10 years. And I feel that, like, wherever you are in life, if you just basically dedicate yourself to knowledge or a skill, that is the only thing that's defensible in the market. Because like, if tomorrow you took away all my businesses, you took away all the money from my bank account, I could get a job tomorrow based on my knowledge and my skill set in manufacturing, because I've been in the game for 10 years and I can add value to a lot of companies. But if you keep going where the trends are, you're always just going to be a small fish in the pond. But it's all about self-awareness, investing in yourself, investing in your knowledge, and investing in your skill.
Yeah. And also being humble. Like, you're a quiet-ish, humble guy, and you don't let it go to your head, considering the success that you've had. When people meet you, you're down to earth. And I think that plays an important role as well.
So I appreciate that. It's a very nice thing to say. And another thing I do is, like, I go by the law of thirds, and it's like who you spend time with. And it's like a third of the people should be people that you're teaching, people who are new to the game. Yeah, because like, you really become very good at what you do once you teach it. A third should be people who are on the same level as you. Like, all right, what are you doing? Right, I'm doing this, and they have got the same goals as you. And then a third should be the people which are much wiser than you, and the people who have achieved what you want to achieve. And I think that if you put yourself in one of those categories for too long and avoid the other two, you're never going to win. If you spend all your time teaching, you're never going to win. If you spend all your time with people on the same level as you, you're always going to stay on that level. But if you can split your time in those 3/3, you can be highly successful. And, to give you an example, whenever we go to one of these like e-commerce events, right, a third of your time is speaking to the people which have paid to come to the event and teaching them. A third of the time is like in the speaker room, talking to other speakers, what they're doing in their business. And a third of the time is speaking to the people who are above you, like the keynote speakers, like the ones like the Gary V's and all these guys, like, right, how do I get to that level? And it's like, as long as you have touch points with those 3 categories, you're always going to stay grounded.
Yeah. And, another way of putting it as well, being a student of the game. As long as you're always the student, you're always going to learn, aren't you? So, talking about being a student, name a business book that has had the biggest impact on your life.
That's a good question. So, to be honest, I only started reading business books like recently, within the last sort of 3 or 4 years. I used to read a lot of books like in high school and university, but I'd always read books of like athletes, like LeBron James and Allen Iverson and guys like that, because I was just always curious. I was like, how did they achieve?
Do you learn from their biographies rather than business books? You learn from their lives.
Exactly. And that's like, there's so many similarities between like athletes and sports people and businessmen. It's
Yeah.
like hard work, determination, self-discipline, sacrifice, narrow focus, and it's like all those things that they apply to their business, to their sport careers and achieving winning their championships. You can also adopt those same mentalities to your business and achieve the same success in your field. So I kind of like learn from, it doesn't really matter what category you're in. I just love to study winners, whether it's Kobe Bryant, Tony Robbins, like whoever, Leonardo DiCaprio, whoever's winning in their field. I want to really study them and see what they're doing and see what habits and disciplines they're applying in their life.
Makes sense.
But actually, going back to your question about the business books, the ones that have really made an impact on me recently, there's one called Rocket Fuel.
Yeah.
And that really opened up my eyes to a lot of things, because like basically in every business you have a visionary and an integrator. And it's like I'm very much like a visionary, big picture thinking. This is the direction we need to go. And if you don't have an integrator to work by your side, then you're just always going to be a big picture guy with no action. And it's like, if you look at some of the biggest companies in the world, like Apple, Steve Jobs was the visionary, but Steve Wozniak was the integrator. Yeah. Walt Disney was a visionary. His brother, like Ralph Disney, was the integrator. You quite often never hear about the integrator because it's the visionary which gets all the credit. But and I look at problems that I had in business in the past, and it's always been because those roles weren't defined between the visionary and the integrator. So Rocket Fuel is a book that very well explains that. And then there's a follow-up book to that called Traction. And that's all about, setting all the right principles in your business to apply to that sort of stuff. And then there's a couple of other books I'd recommend as well. The 48 Laws of Power. I read that. Very, very interesting. And it was the author, Robert Greene, who studied a lot of the world leaders and people in history who achieved like massive power, like, the conquerors of Rome and like Napoleon and people like that. And just wrote about the laws that these people had in their business, in their life, in their philosophy, and in how we can apply that to our lives today. So that's a great read as well.
Cool. Biggest, I think I guess who it is, but the biggest influence on your life and why?
Yeah, definitely my dad. So I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be doing what I am doing today if it wasn't for him. But it's like, I'm really grateful because he actually like got me into the game, but knew when to pull back to be like, all right, go and do your own thing. And he always, when I said I wanted to move to Shanghai, he's like, cool, go for it. There was no like, no, you got to stay here and you got to do this. Like, it was always just like showing me the way, if you know what I mean, without getting in the way, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, that's been an amazing relationship I've had as well. But also, like, you've heard the phrase, like, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I've always made it a point to always just be around people which inspire me and empower me as well. And that's not only people that you meet in person, but it's people who you can learn from, like, digitally as well. Like, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I would say 3 or 4 podcasts a day I listen to. So in
this one every day as well, didn't you? No, I'm joking.
Yeah. No, I do listen to your show a lot as well. And it's like every day I listen to podcasts, right? And it's like the people that I'm learning from every single day are the people at the top of their games. And I think as long as you can keep positivity and motivation and practical things you can learn in your ear every single day, you're always going to be on the right path.
Yeah. What are the 3 most important things you do on a daily basis in terms of positive habits, if you like?
Yeah, every day I have to win the day. So I write, I've got a notebook in front of me, which is a productivity planner. And every day on the top of the page, I write win the day. And you have to write down the 5 most important things that you have to accomplish that day. Because you could write a list of 20 things you have to do today and you just get the easy ones done. And then they aren't actually that important, but they were easy and that's why you did them. But if you actually just order them and what's the most important thing that I need to achieve today, and start it as number 1 and tackle that one first. And then you work your way down the list. As long as you can do 5 of those a day, then you win the day. And if you can do that 4 out of 7 days a week, then you win the week. And if you can win the week, you can win the month. If you win the month, you win the year. And whatever goals you set for yourself, you will achieve as long as you win the day every single day. And I also work in 25-minute intervals called Pomodoros. Yeah. So it's basically you work in 25-minute timers because someone said that like 25 minutes is optimum time to work on one task and focus on one task without getting distracted. And it's like, if you say, okay, work on this for 25 minutes, you can do it without your phone and without being distracted because you know it's only 25 minutes. So I use a timer called tomatotimer.com, and it's a 25-minute countdown timer. And I plan my entire day in 25-minute intervals. So it's 25 minutes on, 5-minute break, 25 minutes on, 5-minute break. And then I even time my 5-minute breaks as well. So I write everything I need to do that day. And like the first task, if it's going to take me an hour and a half, then that's 3 Pomodoros. And I've written that out. And, you know, right, I think at the start of the podcast, I was talking about splitting your day into 3 different days. And I actually write from 6 a.m. till 12, 12 till 6, and then 6 till midnight. And I break it down into 30-minute slots. And then I write my top 5 tasks and I break it down every single way. And it's just like, if you look at everything you need to achieve today and you're like, shit, that's a lot of stuff, your mind just sort of gets relaxed and you're like, oh, I don't think I can do that. But if you're like, I just need to do this in the next 25 minutes, easy, done, next one, done. And then by the end of the day, you've just had a phenomenal day. And I just try to implement that every single day. And I call that winning the day.
Yeah, that's an incredible detailed plan. I think I read somewhere that, what's his name? The rocket guy does that as well. His name escapes me now. Elon Musk. He's playing across the 3 businesses to that level of detail. That's quite detailed. I need to get your discipline. Okay, so talk about health.
Health, yeah. I mean, I think it's very important
in there, don't you?
Yeah, and it's like, I don't think I'd be able to do the things I'm doing if I didn't keep a healthy and active diet as well. Like, I mean, I exercise every day, whether it be like today, like going out for a run, or like going to the gym, or doing an hour of weights, or playing an hour of basketball or football, or whatever it may be. But it's so important for your mental health and well-being, because like I feel that as long as you get some exercise, then you don't want to put any junk in your body. And like then you're going to eat super healthy. And like, it's not only eating healthy for your body, but it's eating healthy for your brain as well. Because when we have like bad foods, I just notice it now, you get brain fog. Like you cannot think properly, and you're at loss for words, and sometimes you don't have focus, and you eat shit foods because you haven't exercised. So like it's a cycle, and it's like whenever I hit a down point, it's normally because I haven't been exercising. And as soon as you get back into gear, then that's when you start to achieve benefits in all aspects of your life, not only like your business, your health, your relationships, everything. So I can't stress that enough.
Makes sense. What is your biggest weakness?
I don't know. It's a good question. I've probably got a lot of them, but I've never dwelled on them. So it's hard to, I would say probably one of the classes I never paid attention to in school was finances and accounting. And I kind of
just fucking boring. I don't blame you.
It's so boring, isn't it? Yeah. And it's just like, I've never been good at just sort of keeping my books in order. And even in terms of like expenses as well, like I book flights, like business expenses, and I just put them on my personal card, and I forget to expense them, and my expenses are a mess. Like that, I would say not being organized in that regard is probably my biggest weakness.
Yeah, for somebody who does all that detailed stuff, I outsource all of that shit. I don't even touch it. It even annoys me when I've had to take a photo on the phone of the receipt to give it to the people to obviously reconcile the bookkeeping. That annoys me. But yeah, tell me about your darkest hour just before dawn. What was one of the worst moments that you overcome? We talked about smacked in the face, but there's levels, right? What's your darkest hour before dawn?
That could be another hour episode. I don't know, man. So I would say it's not like a darkest hour. It'd be like a darkest year. Like when I was 18 years old and I finished high school, I had a surgery which took me out of the game for a year, and I didn't want to tell anyone about it. In fact, I haven't told many people about it. So not many people know this, but when I finished high school, I took a gap year and I stayed at home for the entire year. And I told all my friends that I went to America for the year, because this was the time before Facebook and all that, so there was no social media.
Yeah,
they could get a postcard if they wanted to hear from me. So I just I didn't want any attention, or I didn't want any sympathy. So I just stayed at home for an entire year. Didn't leave the house while I was recovering from like a surgery. And the crazy thing is that was actually one of the best years of my life, because my mum took great care of me, and that's where I really learned about like kindness and stuff like that. And I read a lot of books, and I was very disciplined. And I went in to start university after that, like a much better person. So it was a dark moment for sure. There were hard times, but it made me a better person.
Cool. So that would be one of your greatest comebacks, would it?
For sure,
from
because
adversity.
You can allow something like that to defeat you, and you can make excuses, and you can become really depressed and unhealthy. And put on weight and stuff like that and be like, oh, it's because of this. But I just never put myself in a position where I could make excuses, if you know what I mean. And it comes back to like self-awareness as well, just always being self-aware of where you want to be and where you are.
What is the most common advice that you give to people?
Now it's all about sourcing from China. So, if you know me well, I've got my own Facebook group, Sourcing with Kian, and it's all about, helping people with their importing principles. And it's like a lot of people have come into this game and they've just sort of learned to buy online from Alibaba and things like that. But in my experience, for what I've been doing the last 10 years, there's just so many deeper levels to the success you can achieve in your manufacturing practices. And I'm just sort of happy to share my time. And, this is what we're talking about earlier about splitting your time into thirds. And if I can spend a third of my time just helping other people, that's something I love to do and I'll always do. And so that's probably the best way that I help people.
Cool. What advice should people ignore?
Ignore advice from people who haven't done what you want to do, because I feel that like a lot of people listen to advice from maybe like relatives, parents, brothers, colleagues, whatever. They're telling you not to do something, but they're telling you not to do something, but they have no frame of reference because they've not done it before either. So if someone who has achieved what you want to achieve and tells you not to do something, then yeah, you can take their advice, but definitely only listen to the people who have done what you want to do.
Cool. What else was going to ask you? Let's talk networking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
the power of networking, what it means to you, etc.
So it's huge, right? But something needs to be like set straight. You hear this phrase like your network is your net worth, and that is true to an extent, but it's also bullshit as well, because I know plenty of people who've got an amazing network, but they don't know what to do with it because they don't have a skill.
Yeah, they don't know how to leverage it.
Like I know, and this is a lot more common in LA. Like my friends in LA, like I know people who have got an incredible network, like of millionaires, of athletes, of celebrities, but they can't afford to pay their rent, and it's because they haven't figured out what their skill is to then apply to their network, that they can also benefit from the situation or add value to that situation. So yeah, your network is so important, and that's really why I moved to LA as well, because I'm a big believer in like proximity is power. Like put yourself in the proximity of where the people where you want to be in life. So for example, like working with the NBA, I moved to LA. Like doing manufacturing for the Olympics, I moved to China. Like I just put myself in an environment where I can achieve the best results. So I feel like, it's easy for me because I'm single, no responsibilities, and I can just sort of jet around and it's fine. So it's a lot easier said than done. But when there's a will, there's a way. Just put yourself in the proximity of the goals that you want to achieve and it will happen a lot faster.
Cool. I think we're coming close to the end now. What's the future hold for you? I think we got to about 2015, 16, so we may have skipped a few years. But
yeah, no, I mean, from there, I just sort of continued to work here in Scotland with the family business, really tried to elevate that with my brother. And then from there, I moved to America, did the NBA business, did the Neymar business, planned to launch my travel brand, briefly moved back to Scotland based due to the coronavirus situation. But in terms of like the future, I've really just become addicted to helping people in this environment of e-commerce and like sourcing from China and things like that. So like in this quarantine time, I've set up a studio in my spare room. I'm setting up a YouTube channel. I'm knocking out a lot of content for that, which I'll be releasing soon. And it's really just like events. I love doing more and more events, meeting people face to face, like putting a face to a name, and also like I just want to keep doing bigger and bigger events. And it's like my ultimate goal for the next sort of 5 to 10 years is that, like anyone who's organizing like an event in e-commerce, right? The pinnacle for them, the biggest name they want is like Gary Vee, or if you want mindset and motivation, you want Tony Robbins. If you want real estate, maybe you want Grant Cardone. And I want to be the guy. All right, we need someone who talks about production and products in China. We need to get Kian, and I want to be on the same stage as those guys, and I'm not going to stop.
Can I tell you something? You already own that. That's your domain. I don't know anyone who knows more than you about the sourcing process. You may not have broke out onto the larger stages yet, but your time will come.
I appreciate it. But I know I'm going to get there because I've already visualized it, so it's going to happen.
Good man. Mate, that was your in-depth. That was an amazing journey that you've been on so far. Let's do a part 2 in a couple of years' time, maybe, and pick up the thread to see where you're next.
I can't wait. It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me. And anyone who wants to get in touch with me, if I can help in your journey in any way, you can reach out to me anytime. My Facebook group, Sourcing with Kian, I'm there. Also, Instagram is where I'm most active, Kian_JG. You can connect with me there as well. Shoot me a DM. We'll be happy to connect.
Cool. Just to let you know, guys, 21st tomorrow, pandemic PPC. What are the latest numbers? So we're going to do a roundup there. We'll have Brian Johnson, Dr. Ellis Whitehead, and a few others joining us. Wednesdays, Piss Take Wednesdays this week. We're going to do failed products. So Tim Jordan, Lee Van Erschkorn, and Norm Ferrer and myself are going to rip the piss out of failed products, then have a little bit of fun. Thursday is going to be our Shopify part 2. We'll go in depth there. And then on Friday is going to be a co-brand awesomers.com versus seller sessions with Steve Simonson. We're going to be talking going from 0 to 50 million. Then on Saturday is part 6, Women of Amazon. And then on Sunday, me and Leran close the show again, Mindset Sunday. I don't know if you've tuned into these, but definitely go back and check out what we do. We go deep there. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to everyone in the feed. Thank you to everyone in the groups that are watching these videos. This is day 32 consecutively that we've been doing these lives. I don't know how long we're going to be on lockdown, but my goal is they ain't stopping until our government says you're no longer on lockdown. So you're stuck with us 4 o'clock every day, 7 days a week until further notice. I hope this has helped you personally and your businesses. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Kian, thank you. And I look forward to having you back on the show. Take care.
Thanks, Danny.